Episode 5 of Pocket Edition. Max and Machen, you are back. Not much has happened since the last episode because we recorded it 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
No. Just catching up again.
Yeah, let's just jump straight into the topic because, we don't need to hear Max talk about Destiny 2 for half an hour. Open it up for us, Max. What are we talking about? We're talking about a video game journalist who absolutely sucks at Cuphead.
Yes. Basically, in some of the worst gameplay footage I think anyone has ever seen. A game journalist who has been in the industry for around 25 years, Dean Takahashi, was at, I believe it was Gamescom. Or maybe
it was Gamescom in Germany.
I think it was Gamescom, yeah. And he was trying out Cuphead. He was at an appointment. He was trying out Cuphead, and he couldn't get past the very first 5 seconds of the game, the tutorial part. He spent 1 minute and 30 seconds trying to just jump dash, basically, which to any gamer is one of the most basic things you could do. You could probably do that without even thinking about it, And he just couldn't do it for the life of him, even with the instructions on the screen. So, to be fair, that's not the worst thing in the world, Things are worse. But the thing is, he tweeted this footage kind of to make fun of himself, but kind of just to do it. I don't really know the exact reasoning behind that. But anyways, this ended up causing a pretty big shitstorm of people saying that, if games journalists don't know how to play games, then they shouldn't be covering games, or games journalists just don't like games, they're in it for the money, this and that, and because it's easy and they get to play games all the time. There's just a lot of statements being made like that, and it kind of brought up the idea in me is do we rely on games journalists to be good at games to cover them? I think so, to a degree. I think that you have to have some level of competence in order to be able to cover a game well. And the thing with this Dean Takahashi guy is that there's been stories with him kind of pulling this kind of stuff beforehand. For example, he gave Mass Effect, the original Mass Effect, kind of a bad review because he didn't know you could level up in it. So he thought the game was super hard and this and that. And then even at the Cuphead event, he was saying that, this game is similar to your guys' other game. And he named a game that just wasn't by them. And, journalists, you rely on journalists to be factual, no matter what industry it's in. So there's a lot of questions being brought up around that as well, but the one I kind of wanted to focus on more is how often does this kind of stuff happen without us seeing it? Journalists are supposed to be the first and foremost out there, and if we can't get an honorable coverage out of them, then that's, I don't know, I think that could be an issue because, hey, if you're playing games, you need to be somewhat good at it. That's just how it is, in my opinion. Because if you're not good at a game, you're not getting the most out of it. You're also probably not getting just the normal experience out of it. If you're exceedingly bad at it. There's a reason I don't review fighting games because I'm awful at them.
I was going to say, for those that don't know, Cuphead is a platformer, right?
It's a platformer shooter.
It's an up-and-coming, soon-to-be-released platformer. I think it's had a lot of hype surrounding it. He should know that it's a platformer. He should be aware of how it plays. And he acknowledged in his post after this backlash that he sucks at platformers. I'm well, why did you play it to begin with? Shouldn't they get someone else to go to Gamescom and cover this game? Did they send only one person? If you suck at platformers, why are you putting this video footage out? I don't know. There's a lot of weird questions I have. I think it was just a joke. It was so bad that it became a joke and they decided to release it. But back to what you said previously about journalists, needing to have some kind of level of competence with video games. I don't feel like that should be an issue if you're a video game journalist, because if you're a video game journalist, don't you come from a background of playing video games?
I would think.
You would think so, right? And that's the thing.
You can suck at certain genres, and maybe he just sucks at platformers. Maybe he's so bad he sucks at platformers. And I'm just giving him the benefit of the doubt. And maybe he's at Gamescom. Maybe it's been a long day. Maybe he was standing in a line. I don't know. I don't know what the situation was exactly. But, maybe it'd been a long day. He just wanted to jump into the game. Maybe he felt like he was being rushed because other people were waiting, and he decided to flick through all the prompts on screen and skip all the tutorial stuff, and he just went into it and he just sucked. I don't know. But I know people that are bad at platforms, people that don't play video games, and they can still pick up a video game and be okay, especially a platformer. I feel like a platform, it's a two-dimensional space. I feel like a platformer is one of those games that you jump, you double jump. That's the extent of the early game.
Yeah.
And if you've been playing games for 25 years, like I said, that's how long he's been in here, he's had more of his fair share of platforming, whether or not he's bad at it. Without question. a jump air dash type of thing. And again, the instructions are in front of him, like on the gameplay. They're literally just there. It says press A, then B to dash, I believe it says.
Yeah, something like that.
And he just like doesn't dash. Like he just kind of jumps at it and then he falls and then he just runs back. It's like, is he not trying? And if he's not trying, that's an issue in and of itself.
But then he also proceeds to just sit there and walk into the wall, jumping over and over and over again, like that's going to change something. Instead of going back to the previous platform and performing the air dash like it says to do on the screen.
It's very interesting. I'm going to have to go and check out some of his previous workings because, like you said, the Mass Effect one sounds interesting because he didn't realize that there was leveling involved through the game. It's an RPG. Of course, there's leveling involved. You know, how much research is he putting into games before he plays them? Is he playing them at all?
That's a good question.
Keemstar actually pointed something out interesting, that he claims that a lot of video game journalists, a lot of the shoddy ones, don't actually play the games. They watch a shit ton of streams, they watch a lot of content online, they read a lot of articles, and they cobble together their own opinion and their own review of the game based on that.
I believe it.
Which, don't get me wrong, is great to add on to your preview of game time, of hands-on time. That's what I do after I've gotten hands-on time with things. I look at a whole bunch of stuff, but it's to add on to what I have already played. You know, if there's like a feature like I don't remember super clearly, I look at some gameplay. Oh yeah, that's how that went because I played it.
Yeah.
You know, and like I remember. And it's just kind of, I don't know, it's something I didn't think when this topic first came up, I thought it was kind of dumb. But as I read more into it, as the arguments just kind of kept popping up and everything. But also keep in mind, a lot of people were giving him death threats and stuff. I think that's a bit over the top. That is not necessary at all.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. People were calling for like this man's death and to like retire, get rid of his career, all of that. I think that's a bit overboard. Don't get me wrong. As I was reading into this, it was just like, how often does this sort of stuff happen? That's kind of frustrating, especially like the fact checking and everything. Because video game journalists get shit on.
Yeah, they do.
You know, it's just like kind of the way it is right now. And this just did not help.
No, it kind of
help at all.
Well, there was one not long ago. I can't remember his name either. A journalist not long ago. I don't know. For some reason, Digital Foundry's coming to mind. It can't be them though. Maybe they put the footage out. But there was a clip of a journalist playing Doom 2016 and just absolutely sucking at it. The same situation. He got crucified for being bad at the game. And basically the same situation, except he wasn't trying to make fun of himself. The footage just got put out there of him playing, and he got crucified. Like, I think the backlash in general, I think we should ask the question. I think the question's definitely worth asking. You know, do we need to look into more what video game journalists are doing? You know, are there shoddy ones out there that are doing this a lot, that are pulling the wool over our eyes and just putting out reviews, like Keemstar says, purely off the back of other people's opinions and streams and other media that's out there? I think the question needs to be answered. But I think the amount of backlash that he's had, even if, let's just say he has the brain capacity of a potato. Even if he's a complete potato, he doesn't deserve death threats. That's ridiculous.
No one does.
Nope.
Yeah.
Not at all. That's way over the top.
Definitely, this definitely reminds me a lot of, you know, going back to the times of Gamergate and all of the talk about ethics and video gaming journalism, because there have been a lot of reviews that people have seen that, you know, sometimes a game will get a 10 out of 10 and then you play the game and you're like, this is probably the worst game I've ever played ever. You know, I've seen a lot of those. I've had those happen. Even Mass Effect Andromeda, there were some sites that were reviewing it as one of the best games because they were probably paid to do so. And so it's definitely something that should be.
Well, that's another topic.
Yeah, that's something
paid
else.
For reviews.
Definitely no ethics. And I think competency, it should be a part of ethics, because you should be competent in order to review a game. And if you're so incompetent that you can't get through parts of the game, that you would most likely have to go and research the game, like watch other people playing it, in order to be able to deliver a review, that's a problem.
Well, I feel like the industry can't be that starving for video game journalists. I feel like, Max, you probably know all about this. You know how hard it is getting a job that probably pays in the video game industry.
Yes.
So I feel like it can't be a
100%.
case that we have journalists from other mediums just walking and going, oh, fuck it, I've played a video game once. Let's just apply for this website and maybe they go from there. I feel like that can't be the case, or at least not the majority of the time. Like, surely it's just a few bad eggs, or maybe, just a handful, a small demographic of the, video game journalists that are doing the wrong thing. You would hope so.
You would hope.
You would hope so. But I guess there's really no way to tell right now, unless we do look into it more, because Machen, I agree. I think that should be a form of ethics. It's people playing these games. The competence needs to be sort of in ethics, because, again, 25 or 15 years, or however, whatever I said. It's
25, yeah.
Like, what? That baffles me.
And that baffles me too, especially with his comment that was also talked about in one of the articles that we had looked over for our information, in that he had said that Warhammer 40,000 was a ripoff, an intellectual ripoff of Gears of War. Warhammer 40,000, which has been around for years before Gears of War was even thought to be a thing, something that Gears of War took certain inspirations from. And that's why it's the way it is. And said that it was a ripoff of that. That really calls into question to me his 25 years, with air quotes around it, of gaming experience. That really calls that into question for me. Because guess what? I haven't been playing games for 25 years. I haven't even been alive for 25 years. And I sure as hell know that Warhammer 40,000 has been around a hell of a lot longer than Gears of War.
Now, is he talking about the third-person shooter that came out in, it was like 2011 or something like that?
I'm not sure.
This wasn't a 2011 article.
Okay.
There's a link to it. THQ's Space Marine game.
Yeah, see, I've played that, and I could see how that would draw inspiration from a Gears of War game. But there's definitely, no direct rip-offs. You could say every third-person shooter is pulling inspiration from Gears of War because it kind of reinvented the third-person cover shooter.
Yeah.
And you could say the same about the first-person shooter space with Call of Duty. Mm-hmm. We know everybody's been copying Call of Duty for years.
Or survival horror.
Look at Halo.
Or survival horror with...
Halo's tried to heavily incorporate Call of Duty elements into Halo. They've been doing it for the last two games. So, the industry does, to an extent, rip each other off. It's going to happen, and they rip each other off, and then they iterate on top of that.
Yep. That's just how industries work. All of them do it.
Apple, Samsung.
Like the great writer T.S. Eliot once said, is good poets borrow and great poets steal. And that's just another thing with artistry. You gain inspiration from something, so you rip parts of it to make what you want. But that's not saying that it's a rip off of this. It's you're using that as a part of your inspiration. But the point of that is that Gears of War was inspired by Warhammer 40,000 in the style and the design of the way the characters look. Because a lot of the characters in Warhammer 40,000 are big buff guys and big buff monsters and stuff like that. That's the aesthetic. And I'm not...
Agreed. But like we were saying, this, Machen, and you haven't even been around for 25 years. That's the thing. We need to rely on these people to be experts of their industry. If we're going to get this information from them, they are to be the forefront of the industry.
Right. You're not going to watch, ESPN, for instance, and see someone talking about a sport that they know nothing about. If you're watching ESPN right now, for instance, when college football's gearing up, the guys that you're watching on ESPN and the people that you're watching have been around the sport since they were kids. They know the sport in and out. And when they talk about something, you would know. If somebody was telling me, oh, he was in the wrong coverage and it was perfect coverage and he just missed the block, I would know that he's talking out of his ass and shouldn't be a journalist. But we don't have to call that into question because we can see it. So why are people thinking that you shouldn't have to be competent in order to be a journalist for video games? Why would anyone even defend him? Which I've actually seen.
There's a lot of defending. I think the defending is important, though, because like we said, there's the death threats and everything. So there is some importance for defense. But... in terms of being competent, I think that is just a necessary requirement if you're going to go into this line of work.
Definitely.
100%.
I think if you do anything with video games, you should at least be competent in order for your opinion to be valid on what you're saying, because if you're not competent, then you can't understand the intricacies of what you're doing, and you can't be a reliable voice to people who are competent and want to know more information.
completely agree. And I would say closing comments, but I think you guys have pretty much summed it up pretty darn well.
Yeah.
You know, you need to have a level of competence in order to be reviewing video games, but I'm more curious as to the question of how many more people are there out there like this? And I think the whole death threat situation, I think the people that are doing that need to grow up. That's ridiculous. You should never be sending death threats. It's a classic example of keyboard warriors.
Yeah, welcome to the internet.
And again, I would like to maybe know a little bit more about this guy as well. Like, he's been doing it for 20 years. Was this he's maybe had one or two once-offs where it really highlights his incompetence? I don't know. Like, is he a complete potato, or is he just made a couple of mistakes? That's kind of what has my curiosity. But anyway, guys, let's wrap it up. Thanks for joining me for episode 5.
Yeah, no problem.
Definitely.
We'll have you guys on in the very near future.
Anytime.
If you are into Destiny, perhaps, I believe Max has a Destiny 2 piece going up shortly. He has a review and I believe a discussion piece, much like a podcast going up in the coming weeks. So be sure to check that out. If you like Machen or myself in particular, links along with Max's are down below in the description box. You can find us linked on the GameCast channel, where you can also find a variety of other gaming content. Have a good one.